Cool. I guess I will not beat around the bush. Why is the 1AC process of conscientization better than burning down the United States federal government?
Because burning down the United States federal government, how are we going to do that? If you take away the tools that white supremacy has to perpetuate this anti-blackness, you're probably going to
Okay, I guess that's actually perfectly my next question. How does conscientization take away the tools that cause the racialized fact the middle passage?
Okay, so you didn't take this into two steps. One is that this process of conscientization for me engaged means a exposure of the myth of the model minority and breaking this down. Now that, breaking down the myth of the model minority, is what white supremacy uses to justify the oppression
That's the
of race.
only thing that white supremacy uses?
That's one of the most important things that white supremacy uses. Like, after Jim Crow laws were passed in the 1960s, white supremacy had to get a little bit more tricky. They couldn't just like outright bigotry.
Can I get you off real quick?
Yeah, cool.
Can we agree that this debate is about who presents a better strategy for combating whiteness?
Better strategy, we say this is a debate about competing methodologies.
What's the difference from what I just asked
It
you?
means you have to prove our methodology is bad and present a better one.
Right, so can we determine that it is about who presents a better strategy for combating
And
whiteness?
you have to prove why ours is worse.
You can't
That's
just,
what I'm saying. Do you get a permutation?
of course we get
Why?
permutations. Because permutations are a test of whether methods can coexist.
Okay, fair enough. I guess, what is the psychological violence that comes from being in the middle, as you say, and why is that worse than the psychological violence
We
and
don't
the
say-
physical violence that occurs at the
We
bottom?
don't say it's worse, we just say that's an impact that should be considered. The Kim evidence isolate this because Asian Americans are seen as this model minority by white supremacists. They're used, they are seen as these junior partners, as your Wilderson evidence is going to talk about, except in reality, it's like being a model prisoner. We're all prisoners, that doesn't make them better.
If
White supremacists...
If Sid and I think that violence is just a distraction from physical, gratuitous violence that is inflicted on colored bodies, should we win this debate?
You're not going to win that.
Okay, I guess that's a debate that can be had. What does your AF do for people that are not deemed like worthy of being a model minority? Ergo, Asians that are not Southeast Asians.
Whoa, so first, are you saying Southeast Asians are a model minority?
I am saying that you have presented them as such.
When did we do that?
Well, your 1AC has told the narrative of how the United States has presented them as such. I guess my wording was a little
That's, you don't get our affirmative all then. Southeast Asians are not the model minority, and that's the problem.
I'm a little confused then. You should probably talk to me about that.
Okay, so Southeast Asians are grouped within this broader category of Asians. Conservatives know that East and South Asians are these model minorities, so they, to try and uphold that myth, when Southeast Asians are actually for the non-model minority groups, they try and hide that and be like, oh, these people don't exist, they're Asians are fine in the United States. That's the type of thing that justifies not giving
I think I understand that a little
That's the
better
thing
now.
that justifies them being kicked out of the country in court.
Why is the middle a good starting point, right?
You're not saying that the middle is a good starting point. We agree, anti-blackness is a starting point. It's a question of what we do about it.
So you think your strategy of combating anti-blackness?
It'll be one off and then.
Where, okay?
Huh?
Where, okay?
I would
Straight down.
straight down, I guess. So I guess it'll be like last week, you watched us link stuff on case. And then, yeah, the so
I have no clue what framework.
Yeah,
No, I know. Where is it?
Wilderson is technically a framework.
Huh?
Team festival.
The table scope and it's
Sid, did you save the...
That's the bottom there.
Wait, what do you want?
You want
You
this?
want me to bring it up? Okay.
Yeah.
I believe there are anti-blackness debates going on both sides of this room.
Are there any rooms where they're not anti-blackness debates on it?
I mean, we are in the middle.
All right, Sid, you're good to go.
Ready?
Hold on now, I'm ready.
Oh, sorry.
She's getting it.
I was writing myself a note.
Just quietly like make fun of your joke.
My jokes are wonderful.
Okay. The Grable Civil Society mass pass atrocity only has to go rewrite every 7. It goes slaves only but accountable to any states around tolerance suffering as Wilderson. It takes the grimly the demands of German suffers only. As those grandmothers available to one day draw to violence. The other is farmers capacity things to act as this spatially temporarily articulating. Researching from being and being to becoming and being for the Captain Turner. Turner 7, pretty much of TFC instructional, using techniques will be spent from there to business of important tech as class, training the training substance in the information where commonly paramedics after the black, then there's a progressive to the army, the respective technical knowledge, the revolution that is done, make them to get by the paramedic, and also use genetic focus control, broken into strategic possible, generally after the camera is the part of our dream of, the answer is no, you remember black men, breaks on his foreclosure, the grammar of, the techniques breaks on the meditative content of grammar, was unspoken grammar, the silly grammar, of the Atlantic, assuming ontology, suffering, checkers, and aware ontological protection and information speed civil societies reliant on white supremacy based on genocide, ontological lines presenting people to many granted, occasionally non-white doctor always all the impact on American safety white, supremacist formation of country down wrong, and words of American passion white supremacism, this is based on even white discrimination, non-human discussion of what doing, the logical lines of determined structure, complete American global percent, we should continue calling cross information to global use white supremacist globalization, or white supremacy is based by the administration models that use specific technology, or of course institutionality use presenting the alternative, is to review the one issue that each affirmation of outside more careers and the alternative blood listen, and setting black American something that's under in certain categories of talent bases us, and instructing possible position or method works back in the grammar of contemporary attendance, usually coaching subject presence still with all the LD content that I've complete, this sort of lack is inside of actual direction, gravity, and teachers to be position on subject social death political, besides anti-black office and refusal to form a program complete, or one of the race disorder, there's nothing, for any wish of disorder, social formation may bind to equality, coordination of coalition, which work and say position on the black subjections for the disconfiguration of society black, something back to the equality of civil war, but I still work on there for black, spectrum, waiting, humans, endlessly tactics, economic status, but must be, pushing to the death in life will not change for the better action and assault on establishment thought, mean that we will live to enjoy the fruits of the revolution, but it does mean that we should pursue revolutionary suicide because death is inevitable and this is the only one worth pursuing as needed. Instead of to be connected to reactionary so even more, the readings of spiritual death has been experienced by millions of black and United States victims that seem to mighty forms of oppression and drink their blood to dominate into long of mind, rising against their powers great as the United States will not survive millions many blacks have been driven to the death of the spirit and none, meaning that life will change for the better out of itself without an assault on establishment the better true, the post forces that will drive you to suffer and endure that there is still at least a possibility of changing into all condition revolution does not mean death, we just mean that we such a strong desire to hope and human dignity and existence without them they pause now to the case. Only Koreans get oppressed black, the unidirectional nature of that linkage proves that anti-black lies at the nexus of oppression, but also in Korean communities and scholarship are anti-black. The argument is backwards. Model minority status does not magically create anti-black. The implication of model minority status is a truth claim is an anti-black machine that has an NIDT. So I don't believe that black Americans have structural power of oppressive election records in privilege. These Americans have due to a model minority myth, of course, that higher. White supremacists have a structure that can provide us with more power over whether we can structurally oppress black Americans that we can still socially oppress with black. American anti-black is a huge problem in anti-black nation community that think about penetration and the anti-black equality, we have discussed in propagation, anti-Asian sentiments and other value, the model minority stereotypes going on in this rhetoric, talking about the success of the model minority, they are very closely connected to as many. There's no about the model minority stereotype in order to perpetuate anti-black as a model. Minority myth is a double-edged sword that unites to white supremacy still. White supremacy does not see us as an individual as white. Supremacy tool can decide to control the violent placing and share that we control the root cause as NACA 113 what if people part of the nation would have profiles or potential masculinity and provoke them to say this these days. Hold to get away. I'm gonna say no here that Japanese American trade when we exempt from the kind of characteristics from being by white pictures of the way it was to call it a little party not like the even people that she was a drug dealer with white people considered to be defending the other gentleman by so as a nation by described as features of triple A student would be suspended those blind down in the Japanese American community that are in our varieties on not mentioned to people considered white folks are in the way back to the victim of this transformation American method of the exercise negative stereotypes of African Americans especially look at our cast of the Japanese Americans as a group of group that are quietly and politically pulled by pulled by bootstrap and time in spite of troubles obstacles the Japanese Americans historical and more family issues and events, which are from the Jason work coming from my region, publicly congratulations to the successful spanking on African American was supposed to advantage of well-made immigration, in terms of them, despite the tribal options that possessing, priority of African American culture, part of the effective black culture, artifacts, or the revolution was confounding capability of the black part of the black people to achieve success by giving up anti-black race in order to attack the welfare of the other, coalition and the coalition of color blindness obscures anti-black that sex Centennial obscuring the position of black and undermine multinational coalition building as a politics of opposite without trying to be black and to stop being listed as doomed to miss what is essential in the situation every time to define and defend the rights of the victim of state oppression fail to make substantial gain in parts of as its silence and debate the U.S. without blacks are the only viable and political option will get involved greater lines with anti-black social going beyond it alone there's no doubt will entail nothing less than another revolution and there's scholarship as well as text and increasing complex racial column the politics of racial identity its capacity to grasp the mechanism and nonsense of other racially defined minority groups and politically intellectual interest not without actually started inventing the academic. These are black fishing conflict in the central side of London, very instructive. The starting point of critical backward culture survey, the survey is a critical start by 1990 to multilateral confirmation and started a great good deal of confusion regarding the actness of inherited frameworks of racial theory for the production of knowledge. And not only challenge their political organization and actors on the left flashpoint, which the African American nation bears on the big accused and invitation of the react everything that should be considered germane to the difference approaching and more than relation to the black struggle on A, and the twilight civilization and still left with the need to the act of black people. See, say Korean versus anti-black bonds from some perceived Asian superiority based on technology of whiteness, the daily rise or the result of empowering Koreans and with that causing anti-black bonds and sexism, and when these two races are made with empirical variants, it's supposed to go to continue that discussion, or based between black and the conflict between Americans and Americans, the contain different cultural differences, although Koreans want everybody to believe in instructions on what making honest system must do that, want to make Korean shop one of the taxes had accepted widespread stereotypes about African Americans as lazy when coming from the goal of the fact that race especially of American and American anti-black race of 1% such representation of reference to intentional or black anti-black race of the Korean, American observed race as a effective as the act of submission by accent, Koreans trying to tell the jobs disrespect and show the other constructed by white, race culture and independent were one that's what they make collectively divide and conquered racial, and our historically position of the white social black was a class, it's what they was position workers or customers and employment it's over, looking at workers in the city and working this consistently respective, race between black and Korean American run the build, the equivalent of what they're reducing stereotypes this from far racial, higher the difference and the equivalent from black, working class over and against it, Korean American entrepreneurs of political power in the USA, those both in the USA were exposed, political power of blacks and companies, the physical exposure on mass, meaning and militancy is the element of this inherent to exposing us by essential to remove the passivity bringing authentic alternative way to the militancy is undermined by equality state is the element of risk that makes action or to the ability can only be won by response that militants not just naturally necessary to do objective alternative being by holding it, removing the passivity of the personal comfort as a productive human dignity, energy momentum bodies into motion to a standard still in the politics that exist in the politics, those taking cover really that's both strategy for the passivity and prefer, or starting when a sex and no consensus, then makes emerge running the cause and meaning of the bonds that erupted on April 2919, and to continue tension between Korean American and African Americans so on, and when North during the 1970s, the African American community was stagnating, economically the Korean American community was thriving, the non-attended state is the reference to the European political economy, it's no critical discussion that is instead, remember the objective economy, material condition calling this bar, the ability to refusal to pursue the class analysis, the interpretation racialized, it's having the ability to defer across the religious system, the blind spot as produces, interference and distortion in the concept of favorable assessment is ineffective political, and have an opportunity to commentate names as a reframing device targeting, or Korean businesses that is nationalized as a trashing and thus underserved, the side effect, or otherwise euphemize the process of economic expansion Korean, or medical contribution, penetration, internal genitality, realization, or value, the acknowledgement themselves, thereby covering the question of announcing the biological, benefits of proliferation and natural cycles around black, where the people's resentment is thought to be the inevitable growth of a natural process that crosses the societal, becoming protecting public place is placed on part of our rating, social practice confirmed with culture different group closely dividing when it came, during the erasing police finding that exemplifies of the combining failure, of the use economy to provide jobs and holds people in class with different narrative, here in contact with the between the blacks and country represented.
I'm going to give you a speech talk with tags. Is that something?
That was preferential.
Yeah, I like wrote things during the speech, so.
Sorry, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't read the last part, right?
No.
So. Catch.
Yeah. Alright, well, let me get this up. And we are good.
Alright, ready?
Yeah.
Alright, is a link to our methodology or to our identity as Koreans?
Methodology. Sure.
Okay, let me read you our methodology. Given our advocate promote a process of conscientization to expose the myth of the modern minority that has been used as a justification for the position of the black body. Why do your starting point better links apply?
It's the first part of that statement, right?
The process of conscientization.
Starting with the model minority myth.
What do you think conscientization is that makes it a link?
We don't think starting with the model minority is the right way to go. We have a bunch of links on case that we read that say starting with other races undermines fighting anti-blackness.
I like these links. Let's go to it. NIDT. Quote, the model minority
That's
myth.
not what he was talking about, but
I don't care. The model minority myth are very closely intertwined. That makes no grammatical sense. As many Asians will fall back on the model minority stereotype in order to perpetuate anti-blackness.
Yeah.
How are we falling back on the model minority stereotype to perpetuate anti-blackness?
Focusing on the model minority rather than fighting the structural antagonists of
It says the model minority myth
It
causes
also
anti-blackness.
says, I can tell that someone pro-Korean wrote the bits
That's
about
the
anti-Korean
introduction
sentiment.
of the article. The article says that Koreans fall back on the.
Did you read the article?
We
Yes.
did, in fact.
And I'll read it again in the 2 weeks.
Next article, Nakayawa. Do you know who Vincent Chin is?
Yeah, we actually read cards from him maybe later.
You will read cards from him maybe later. Okay, so explain to me what happened to him then.
Explain what happened to Vince Chin? I have no idea.
You have no idea, but you're gonna read cards.
Well, there are probably a lot of things that happened to this individual in his life, but I don't know what you're referencing.
You're probably gonna argue that we're a example of civil society that tries to reform. Am I correct?
That tries to reform it.
That's right. We're an example of civil society we're an example of a civil society reform, so we're complicit with the ethics of civil society. That's what you're gonna argue.
That
right?
might be one argument we make.
Okay. If we need to be complicit with the entirety of civil society, do you have to be complicit with the entirety of your author's ideologies?
Who are our authors?
Like Wilderson, who says that the Holocaust was a family affair. Are you
I don't
complicit
think we
with
have to defend
everything
every
he says?
single thing that Wilderson
Then
said.
why do we have to defend every instance of civil society?
All the links are specific to the model minority myth, which your entire
I mean, there's a little bit
I have 50 seconds. One line. Exposing and breaking down the model minority myth causes anti-blackness.
Sure. Easy.
no.
Your question again, sorry. Exposing the model minority.
It's breaking down the model minority myth. Causes anti-blackness.
So we have the piece of sex and evidence that is not from 2010. Does not talk about the model minority myth, but it contextualizes other struggles detracting from the antagonism of anti-blackness, right?
Except our struggles based in anti-blackness. Keep going, you have...
If your struggle is based in anti-blackness, then I don't know why you're skirting away from the question of who has a better methodology for challenging anti-blackness.
That's right. What is your methodology?
Our methodology is revolutionary suicide.
What does that mean?
That means
Right on the line.
that means that Sid and I know that we die in the case of the revolution, and so we are advocating for something that most assuredly means our death. Our Wang evidence contextualizes that and says that that creates the removal of passivity.
Hey, can you point the camera there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you should pull me.
You say you drop off.
I did. I'm just gonna say we'll do it on the scroll. Case critique.
When you go to case, are you going to contention 2 or contention 1?
Contention 1 first, or where did you
So I have a page that's contention 1 and then a different page that's contention 2.
Okay, flow first on contention 2, that's probably how I'll put out over you over there, conscientization. Then I'm gonna go specifically to the box, okay? Ready?
No.
All right.
No.
Now you're ready.
Coming out the one see they do not have a disaster methodology dictated Korean identity using the method of model minority as a method that is based off our identity and not all based on the process of conscientization. None of the conscientization causing clarification or epistemic growing. If this epistemic growing in this really leads to the bringing down of the statement that it's a process of conscientization itself. Out of the couple one see they do not have a methodology other than violent military action. What does that do? You do not know that this means that you cannot go for the one see based on the role of the values as a PD methodology to liberate oppressor 2 that they have to see versus the psychological violence of Asian American South Asians are always swept on the rug, always kept invincible, always silenced because they are not seen as legitimate enough. This causes things like educational disparity and also welfare benefit where they are excluded from the positive poverty. Second impact is the myth of the model minority, which I will impact on the second case. We'll go there right now. First is our NIDT code. There is no reason to have Asian fall back on the model minority status to perpetuate anti-blackness. This card is exactly what we are doing in the 1ACN, that we are breaking down the myth of the model minority. There is no like NIDT 12. Yes, it's a little socially oppressed black American be anti-blackness. There's a huge problem with anti-blackness. Asian American community. I feel like I can feel about Asian blackness. Need to discuss and confront it. There's also Asian side that model minority stereotypes go on the head. The model minority myth and anti-blackness, however, are very closely intertwined, as many Asians will fall back on the model minority stereotype in order to perpetuate and as many of us Asians choose to wield it as a weapon will call it the model minority as a double-edged sword giving us to by white supremacy. Ultimately, it's still white supremacy rhetoric that does not say us an individual because of white supremacy. Close to society and pit us against each other. Now, their second card, Nagamanga, says that Trayvon Martin would not have been shot. If he was like, the reason he would not have been shot is because of the myth of the model minority. Conservatives are pointing to the Asian Americans saying, darling, they are the darlings of the right and saying Trayvon Martin would have been shot. Now, however, what they fail to neglect is to cut the bottom half of the article, which talks about Vincent Chin and how if we do not tackle the myth of the model minority, future Trayvon Martins may indeed be Asians. It's not than 13 Asian Americans are subject to different kinds of stereotypes that's creating a form to the narrative of the African American model minority. It's been out the media during the civil rights era until the Asian American was most labeled as an evil outsider, but in the midst of black outbreak protest, the article recast Japanese Americans as the group that had been quietly it's all good, taking up anti-black race, and nowadays the model minority is treated a lot by Asian. The model minority makes invisible there's something of anti-American stereotyping continues to hold Asian Americans separate from other people. It was this kind of stereotyping that led to the murder of Vincent Chen, who was beaten to death by displaced all-American, neither did the jail time. It has China's rise of economic superpower, inspiring anxiety, even hatred. The expected of more Vincent Chen out to get us wondering it's a good thing to be used no matter what the payoff. The wake up to the Zimmerman, the stereotypes that like African Americans and Asian Americans may be very different, but they are really flip sides of one card, a race card, and that card is being played against a one. It would be wise to recognize and work together to destroy these stereotypes of the model problem minority or future chair of all marches may indeed be Asian. Now the Sexton card versus the coalition card. This is not in the context of model minority or conscientization. It just talks about a whole multi-racial, multicultural and approaches back. We agree that anti-black should be the start, but how do you do that? Burning down the state? No, we say a process conscientization is probably a more realistic way. Also, this coalition does not make sense because of the permutation arguments I will make later on in the critique. Now, he says that scholarship is bad, but however, this is based on our identity, not of the epistemic growth we get from our methodology, which is the process of conscientization. Also, this justice that Koreans are more superior to black. This is the myth of the model minority that we break down. The next part says Asian spirit and LA rights are what it costs to get that. One in the Black for Sunday has been called this is the impact by shaking evidence of what it says the model minority creeps presented between Asian groups because they think that Koreans are more superior. That's why the LA riots in 1992 broke up because black Americans had resentment against the Korean Asian Americans. So the affirmative resolve for it. Now the starting point, if I don't matter, I will answer that on the critique. Go there now. I heard an 8-minute story why anti-blackness is a bad thing and why we need to destroy Duke. We don't just read with you. As an Asian American, I am used to being a tool where my stunning image in chemistry class is compared to the image of the only black class in class that kids make fun of it. Haha, you don't know what a hybrid orbital. Teachers expect me to succeed, however they expect the other people to not. Well, what does happen is I'm told I'm work too hard. People present how I break the curve on midterms and how I smart to break the field up. They say I ignorant articulation that someone who is a student cannot possibly have a yes, the stereotypes that are associated with African and Asian Americans are different, but they are still the same side of the same card that whiteness plays us like against all time. So I will concede to one and say that what anti-blackness is talking about the two will stand up here and say that blackness is what calls it Asian oppression, that Asians don't feel gratuitous violence. However, that's not true. Now a history lesson. After the Civil War, plantation order devised schemes to ship in millions of immigrants to avoid hurting free lives. Dealers claimed that Chinese were better laborers and more obedient. Mass Chinese hiring were also happening in the north where they were used to replace striking workers. Eventually, the image of an Asian were associated with job stealers, aliens, forever foreigner. The attacks were not common. In 1871, a King Lynch and 11 Prince of Chinese in Los Angeles. In 1877, the order of Caucasian tried to burn out the San Francisco China. 1855, 200 armed minorities in Wyoming took their anger out on 600 Chinese workers, resulting in a massacre. Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Koreans were all viewed as evil, trying to infiltrate the United States until the 1960s, when the start of the Civil Rights Movement, and black outrage, whites got scared. When racial tensions were ever favored, the article came out. Articles such as the 1962 success story of one minority in the United States by the U.S. News Report or the New York Times success story, Japanese American style. These heralded Asian Americans with no outside help. Newsweek said the Asians were outweighing the weight. Fortune said Asians were a super minority. However, the mirrors perpetuates anti-blackness, such as in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was able to go up on the planet and praise Asian Americans' fight for being so successful and turn smacking down blacks for failing. At the same time, Reagan policymakers were getting ready to take out the welfare state just by the myth of the model minority, or like 1992, where the U.S. Civil Rights Commission report really showed that Asians did not face civil rights discrimination violation, leading to Newsweek rating how blacks need to step up their game. Or like 1965, when a large number of highly skilled East Asian doctors, engineers, and nurses were selectively allowed into the United States in order to perpetuate that the free market did not contain racial discrimination. White supremacy had to get tricky after the Civil Rights Movement. No longer could they justify anti-blackness on bigotry because they had blacks would backlash. So what did they do? They chose Asians to be their pet to allow them to rationalize anti-blackness and allow them to continue. The myth of the model minority is what justified white supremacy to be anti-black, because with all these hard-working Asians, it must be the blacks' cultural values or work ethics that prevent them from being successful, right? No, the myth of works a dual horn by continuing anti-black violence against Asians. For example, Vincent Chin, a 27-year-old who recently went Chinese man in 1982, two white workers used a baseball bat and beat Vincent Chin to death, calling him a chain fucker, and held him down while they swung a Louisville slugger. Right for the auto workers that he was a jack and stealing the jobs blue in 02. Little yellow man is clearing up chin with single lap into the break. All the connections jack with Rachel and was kind of and my friend was not talking or he's stealing kind of like what sort of testimonies that he kind of officially even channel answered brutal killing a bit confidential observer chick case with a pollution or like in 1989 Blue 02. Patrick Purdy dressed in a military fatigue took a semi-automatic rifle, went to the elementary school and opened fire on the playground. 5 students were fatally wounded, although he purposely aimed at Southeast Asian refugee children. Local authorities dismissed immediately any racial factor, even though Purdy expressed his evidence toward Asian Americans feared that the country would be overtaken by immigrants. Or in 1987, Wu in New Jersey, groups of white and Latino may have begun a series of assaults directed toward Indian immigrants, calling themselves the Dot Buster, an allusion to the Biggie. The Ink Beat doesn't even kill the Navarro Modi, and Curly made Charlotte local police have revived the characters attack as racially. Or in 1981, in Wu 2, the Fisher in Texaco took a Ku Klux Klan to court. The climate competition racial between the active African or Native. Or 1996, Wu 2, outside San Diego, 2 white Jews to have midway one of them reported journal. I just killed a jab a while ago. You can mark the card of permutation. It's going to be duos, different strategies for different people. I should have gone for this in my last 2 but I will go for it again. The black body can engage in consciousness, hooks in 2003, the consciousness ability to aware to owning actions that power subliminal meaning critical consciousness prospect reflecting career standpoint awareness of reality with black people consciousness very similar white supremacist society fit will not change the work when we utilize knowledge ways to circumvent racial exploitation by children or they live in the racist society act may act simply conscious about ways to provide to public image carry through referencing down culture whiteness and then allows for these coalition buildings that solve for the section card
Actually,
all the historical examples you give show examples of white people doing violence on the model minority.
Model minority, there is no.
I mean, sorry, South Koreans.
South Koreans.
That's what
None of the examples were about South Koreans.
One of them was one of the Wu cards. Anyways,
No, Wu cards were about
okay, that's irrelevant.
China.
I'm just saying, can the model minority myth exist without civil society, white civil society?
The model minority myth is what justifies anti-blackness.
I'm just, if we do not exist, if without white civil society,
No, this is not a question about if anti-blackness are caused.
Really blatantly.
What?
If white civil society does not exist, can there be the myth of the model
I'm
minority?
not sure what that means because the alternative never reaches that point. This is
I'm not worried about my alternative right now.
I'll answer the further. Model minority myth is a tool white supremacists use to justify
Awesome.
anti-blackness.
If no
White
white
supremacists use
supremacists, then
Yeah,
is there still
but-
a tool?
I doubt that you're going with that. You're going to get rid of every single white supremacist. We say that process conscientization is a
that's
real
fine.
thing.
And also, the resentment between minority groups that still exists.
Also, you have to realize if you break down the white supremacists, you have to get rid of their tool. How do you get rid of their tool? By breaking down the myth of the model minority.
how was the model minority started?
How was it started?
Yeah,
You want another history lesson? 1960, when black civil
the LA riots is the only when it started.
What? No, let me explain. You just
Only right in 1960.
1960s, black uprising, black protest, civil rights movement, racial fevers were at a high fever pitch. So news articles came out about Chinese immigrants, Japanese immigrants, Korean immigrants who were being successful without any help at all. White supremacy had to get tricky. They didn't want.
Why is it that the prison industrial complex is filled with the black body and Asian Americans? If it's true that Asian Americans are excluded from society,
What? But they are the Asian Americans? What are you
that's
talking
factually incorrect.
Wait, what are you? I don't.
Why is it
what's
true
the
that the prison industrial complex is filled with black people rather than
They're filled with
Asian
a bunch
Americans?
of Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodians and Hong Kong.
Why is the vast majority then black people?
Because, oh, you want to know why? Because of the myth of the model minority.
So that led to violence against.
Are you kidding me? They're like, look at this gunslinging, drug dealing, black person. Look at this studious Asian.
We don't agree with that, by the way.
Yeah, we're just saying this is the logic that white supremacy use, and they're like, oh yeah, this Asian is doing well, this the black guy is breaking the law. Let's put him in
How does
prison.
Asian conscientization, I don't know.
Conscientization.
Conscientization do about the black body? How does the black body access that? Because your current card is like generic, becoming
No, no, no.
conscious. Where is it specific about using model minority?
Conscientization, as also Jimmy put it, is our epistemic growth. Me and Michael are going through a process of conscientization, and we say that's a better way to take down civil
How do other
society.
people take part in that conscientization?
You can choose. You can do the research. You can do the academic reflection. You can interact with people to
People
go
who
through
go
it.
into who are not Asian Americans, how do they use
Our bell hooks card. It's
I know, so I'm looking at the
bell
bell
hooks
hooks
card
card.
says that critical consciousness is not something like unique to Asian Americans. This is how we go through a process of conscientization because we are Asian American. You two, I can't tell you how your critical process of conscientization will look like because you two are different from us two.
Here you go. What was that?
okay.
Are you using that?
Yeah.
Fastest rappers there are. order is critique.
Give me one back, hold on.
There's, yeah, sure.
This is good.
Just critique, right?
Yes.
Any like the overview?
No, actually not. I don't think.
Alright, whatever you're ready to do.
I'm not ready.
Yeah. She's on. There you go.
Sorry, my principal just asked me. So I don't know what to answer.
No, it's no problem.
Okay. Just okay?
Yep. So are we ready?
Yeah.
Cool.
You have misplaced looks to debate your truancy. Wasn't interesting. I find taught me a lot about the interaction between the minority and the anti-black. You've forgotten to talk about what your methodology does to contest why, because that was supposed to be the biggest part of the truancy, and that took you about 10 seconds on page. The reason why I'm going to win this to be the alternative selves, the cruel optimism of white nation shown by the refusal of the one and sacrifice of white values within that one, the embracement of oppositional politics that utilize ontology as a flashpoint for oppression, desire to break down the social formation of pessimism and key to confront the complacency and optimism that's bullshit and self-negation is the ethical act of maintaining the world of colonialism as Marian said. The imperative decolonization becomes an ethical law radically because of determination, negation, negation, without ever bringing the depths of history and against the Swiss guy said which will allow crowd colonial state by impression will advocate raise war against the colonists, boys, rights, and power politics, including domestic, electric, consideration of war, which in black understood as the source of historical failure needs cathartic cure, or annihilation and death, the face that comes with assumed blacks otherwise, assumed nothingness, and death, the politics, black experience, the endurance of negation, only unauthorized, cannot be determined, embracing for life, political violence, and militancy is key. The two things that the one and two piece of white and key that we have specific solvency for Sid and I story, which I will tell you in a second. The element of risk inherent to exposing one life central removal of passivity and creating authentic alternatives that will take you to my piece of QEP new evidence indicates that we need to engage in revolutionary suicide, that is the only way to combat anti-blackness, that is the best methodology for creating change. Sid and I are committing revolutionary suicide by advocating the alternative. We know that if the alternative were to be enacted, Sid and I would probably be the first and second person to die because we go to a rich private school in Florida. But that's the reason why we are able to access this argument, because the new evidence indicates that when we come to terms with the fact that we will not be able to engage the fruits of our revolution, but rather do it as a selfless act of revolutionary suicide that empowers other bodies and creates a form of agency that is not explainable or connectable to anything that has occurred. That is the only way the black body is establishing resistance to anti-black violence. That is going to be your framing question. Impact debate. It is unethical to be free from the slave is not free. The world as we know it shouldn't exist. It was created a fundamental injustice of the middle passage vote for the critique. You see, know that this is the one. It's the only ethical stance to take. Every gesture is meaningless. Racist makes right. If it's about the erasure of the black body, that makes racism a decision rule. I'm not going to read the next piece about it, but I will say that their analysis does not come from the starting point of the middle passage, rather comes from the starting point of other minorities. The reason why you have to proportion by the piece of sex amendments, which I'll go, which I want to say the permutation is going to be the reason why their specific 1AC performance distracts from the narrative of anti-blackness. Even if they add a little part to the end of their advocacy, it's not enough to make up for the first part, which is clearly and explicitly about the myth of the model minority, not about confronting anti-blacks. They're going to say it's the same thing as long as we win a semblance of a link, or that our methodology is better. We've already won this debate. It's tried or the negative social nothing. There's nothing to lose for the black body this section in time. For blacks in the U.S. political borders, nations take part in postal social guards, racial honor, odds, different talking about death, political life, not last one, different life, and the political lose because they've not had it all. White management of urban facing market full of political imagination by dictating what is thinkable. Balance on the black body is rendered invisible because it should bring their impact copies to be not calculated what is not counted in the first place. That's Wang and 12. Management of speaking markets that our political imagination by determining what areas are thinkable against the person are ultimately persons that tell what experience that happens in those objection and vulnerable assumptions of the direction of the right imaginary borders. No placing away the right does not have access to laws when people narratize the instance when black man is out there is no story. The root cause of being anti-black is the root cause of all other oppressions and possibly anti-black without being anti-black at section and time. The anti-Semites that I'm leading from the president of the anti-Semite cannot go the second chance, however, visited black bodies here, or realities and possibly anti-Semitic, anti-black, possibly anti-black, anti-Semitic war. If the worst black phenomenology not exist, radicalized double questions, ask yourself the question, or not the power, I suppose, is Trayvon Martin's Asian, would he have been shot, would he have been suspected, would he have been torn apart with the right post? I think not. Gabe and Michael told some interesting anecdotes about their lives, but not prove why their suffering does not foundationally exist due to anti-blackness. They're probably going to agree with this, but we'll give you 3 reasons why that is problematic for them. First is he not God, and some kids, which is probably the I think from the two kids that there, its origin, the minority myth was only constructed to demonize the black body. The Reagan administration shifted the position from Asians for 2 Asians to attempt to prove that foreigners could achieve success, but the blacks are structurally inferior, positing the black body's welfare, kings and queens. The foilistic nature of that relationship proves there would be no minority with any black race. And the reason I'm going over a lot of what the 2EC said is they don't have an out in this debate, so they don't have an out in this debate. They have agreed that anti-blackness structures the oppression of Asian Americans, which is the reason why it's only a question creates the best methodology to challenge anti-blackness, but I think I worked on permutation. Actually, Asian positionality is fungible and therefore can't take part in the permutation as Wilderson intended. The theory posits desire for black existence instead of taking a conscious and unconscious look of African blacks on both outside. They also went on by plus teaching simulated unconscious blackness. How they theory of self-altering theoristic questions see themselves as dominated press and those subjects on the less world of other subjects. The permutation is not exactly here in 2 reasons. The net benefit has no purchase if we win our social death arguments. The black ones are resenting this try to the alternative. The sex thus the alternative is to refuse the one AC death is not compatible with including all or some of the act. The permutation can result in dialectical synthesis because it relies on a level playing field because between Asians and blacks the harms the one AC are conflicts in the face of an antagonist that distract from a structural analysis of that antagonist as Wilderson intended. Structure and positionalities and are elaborated by white men, French men, black men, flesh, corporation, relations, positionalities, work, antagonists, and their body oppositional, and irreconcilable principles, hold this hope, and other sense, their religious form and foundation, one conflict, Western hemisphere possible, ontological balance, level, bachelor, time, place, and position are foundationally a balance of class warfare. They have not performed an unflinching period back, and also means their attempts will always be reappropriated by whites. That's the Wilderson evidence from the one and the obscures violence, the permutation obfuscates the structural position of blacks, but Ermine's coalition is only drawing the line with the alternative self-sense, the sex stems from the one and also the permutations here are theoretically illegitimate, or it's only less eliminates an element of the one is here adds an action found in either of the one is he feels severance creates a moving target, intrinsic shifts the terms of the big force definitionality voting each day lack, paradigmatic analysis, the separating with experience of different, irreconcilable relationship with bonds you cannot risk identifying with the politics of the masters, Wilderson intent. The rhetoric of the settlement of the slave grammar, social suffering, see these grammars are predicated upon a different relationship to violence in language, ways, modality, studies, position of subject, naturally different relationship to after error, help between the masters and rhetorical, analysis of the self suffering, growth, one-time analysis, showing meditation, and irreconcilability between object of genocide, with the object of captivity, vulnerability, subject, exploitation, alienation. Even if the myth of the model minority is created by anti-blackness, these last two pieces of evidence prove that their story cannot be a part of what we build our alternative around, because it says that those stories, they cannot achieve synthesis with the one AC because they can't win a permutation. The plans part of the permutations used to only risk against privilege. Their political discourse running the grammar of suffering invisible as Wilderson intent. The subject's position of slavery to today's intellectual protocols inform the existing ontology. This is another understanding of black and red provincial political discourse amounts a little more than passion dream, or their moral status and political protocols, where the two domains of subjectivity, intellectual protocols, and the kids, the back items, and solve this question fixated, and instead of experiencing your right identity, make up structure, position, points out doing discourse, high and high, and exploit the grammar of suffering that the rights of the U.S. foundational antagonist, state affairs, exasperation, ontological deficit, the discourse in the million of irreconcilable advance of black reparation, and fluid identity is not cool. That is what they're valid. That's what they post out and said. They said different strokes for different folks, but blacks can only have one stroke. That's the spirit. 92, the conceptualization of ethnicities matter choice, the categorization matter one class, another character, and one control conversation, another closes a category of identity by referencing her point ethnicity, therefore experience personal choice 0 is non-migration with identity, flexible, and involved middle class Americans are very ways and non-Hispanic by white Americans typically introducing the oppression and experiencing their less facility to ethnic groups and cross characterization. Africans, of course, we brought the Nancy's cannot be black or African either race and my computer set. So I guess we'll end my speech there. I should plug it in though.
I'll first start with the beginning of the speech. How are we not a negation?
Are you know what?
Not a negation.
A negation?
Yeah.
Well, if you affirm something, right? That's like the obvious instance of that.
Like our counter-advocacy said we actually said. Go on.
Right. So you are an advocation of like conscientization. That is clearly not a negation of
So
civil society.
conscientization is anti-black.
Yeah. I mean, sort of. The way that you
I have
presented
2 minutes 30 seconds. Find me a card that says conscientization is anti-black.
I don't have a part about
Okay.
conscientization.
Why is conscientization anti-black? I have 2 minutes 20 seconds for you to give me a warrant.
I can tell you why your performance was anti-black.
No, conscientization. Go.
I don't know what that is still, because the 2AC didn't really help me out
Okay,
there.
so obviously you don't have a reason why it's anti-black.
No, I can tell you why your performance
Now, you
was
say
anti-black.
that,
Just because of that.
Asians are fungible on the permutation debate. If that's true, why can't are Asian bodies not black bodies?
The Asian body is not fungible, that's what that
The
is.
Asian body is not fungible.
Yep.
Why?
Why is the Asian body not fungible? Okay, I would direct you to some of C.E. Hartman and Wilderson's analysis about the replaceability of the black body, right? During slavery, blacks were
I'm
seen
not
as...
talking about slavery, I'm talking about.
But I am talking about
Why are
slavery,
Asians
that's where our
not
argument
fungible?
comes from.
Why are Asians not fungible?
I was explaining to you what the
No, you're talking about the
theory...
black body right now. I want to know
Right, I'm
Asians.
telling you what fungibility is.
The Asians were slaves in Mexico.
Different type of slavery.
Okay, fungibility. Why are Asians not fungible?
Because they are not seen as replaceable. They are not seen as one, like, as equivalent across the board, right? The fact that there even exists a model minority proves that some Asians are regarded differently than others.
What? The model minority proves that people look
Right.
at Asians have one type, a hard, studious, working Asian. Moving on, what's the
You said
paradigm
there's a difference
analysis?
between the way that
What
South
is that
Asia, Southeast Asia, all those are...
Yes, there is a
Right.
difference. How are the myth of the model minority shields that? Now, paradigmic analysis, what is it?
Paradigmatic analysis?
Yeah.
Sure. Wilderson is a structuralist, right? So he
Yes.
says that we need to look at the undergirding features that have caused the world to be as it is today,
The
right?
myth of the
So
model minority is that not under which
it is not the middle passages. That's where our starting points differ, which is why those are important.
So, I'm confused. The 2AC came up, considered that anti-blackness should be the starting point. Why does anti-blackness exist
What,
in
the
civil society?
anti-blackness was not the starting point of the 1AC. That's our whole argument.
I mean, anti-blackness was the starting point of the 1AC.
No, you added a caveat to your advocacy statement, and now you're pretending that it was
What's
the
the
starting point of the 1AC. The caveat was the part about anti-blackness, that you were like, the ways that it,
Okay, so which part of the YC doesn't agree with anti-blackness?
it's not about agreeing, your starting point is incorrect.
Okay,
And I think that's irrelevant, because I think this is a debate about which methodology is better for challenging anti-blackness.
Okay, let's go. Why does anti-blackness exist in civil society today?
Because of the middle passage.
Because of the middle passage.
Yes.
Like, all the way up to now, it exists just because of the middle passage.
That was the original event that caused the way that...
Really?
Yeah, really.
So I guess we like a roll of ballot stuff on the K, then case.
Maybe.
Roll of the ballot stuff,
It's like a framework.
and you want that on the K flow?
Yeah.
Like at the end of where I.
Yeah, sure, you
Transparency?
can, sure.
Okay.
Oh, that's bad. Okay. Just give me 1 second. What's up?
We have one in our.
Oh.
That's a cool one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, this broke too.
Yeah. Can you jump Civ to NCSB shock? This would accelerate things. Or just give him the jump drive.
It's in one.
Got finishing, yes.
I think it's
That makes this easier.
just give it a jump shot for that.
This was not the one.
It's in there now.
It's not anything.
It's not?
That's a cool name.
Yeah, I've been good.
Oh, I'll tell you.
Sorry.
The role of the blacks with deciding best count as anti-black, they do not meet it to start with the mentally model minority. It's a question of sequentiality. Black was not the purpose of the one, even though they added as a sign on the one see their whole. That was by the model minority there, the connection to it adheres, and critical uniqueness from the education of the black while the only good improves. The one is small doesn't help as Leonardo, until it's 13 race education are so underdefined, they're so, you can education cannot part of the rule that race must have demographic race, look the alpha and make school from the targets are educational, providing when there are soon to be problems with failures of the best and anti-blackness is the most important part of every resolution and framework. This is the backbone of the activity, and all its theory anti-blackness must be confronted as evidence told I was trying to see low black to becoming a group of people never experienced blackness have never failed to engage in leadership. It's not with the resolution framework. Why? To just be valid or more reminding the whole world's more inclusive than any debate community or ideas regarding debate and racism are anti-black color approaches incredibly violent and culture. Training is starting at personal speech irrelevant. Politics and simply not racial that exists. Your culture of that training is a strategy to devalue black thought and literature. You have immense bias for the analysis which cause you say even offensive things. You only know how to talk about people. You prefer to listen to working your silence on anti-blackness silence on anti-blackness and you want to see reflecting your refusal to confront the inequities. Some of my black debates are resistant to it told me that's trying to have discussion is that they have drilled and wrong form arguments between them and talking over a decade reaching for years to the freedom of talking that they may hold but not which are methods of discussion about debate or generally methods of hostility and silent very incredible is the only vocal that has responsive minus in terms of
Read this card real quick. Go back up to the Snellhook's argument.
Permutation, the perm stuff.
the idea that everyone is different does not apply to the black body. Forms of individual existence are categorically unavailable to blacks who wear a social non-identity as Wilderson, intending civil society represent itself as being infinitely exclusive and the technologies or material normalized to manufacture searching not to, but the coming basket of teaching and disturbed by this country. You may see that a narrative is related to space observation is trying to say, on top of the status of blacks onto a series of fake stories that organize on its complex which are the proverbial those who are not alienated, sort of open and gratuitous, but people are not black bodies, the most impeccable environment of what needs to be human made people cannot still be of anything that comes from a position of ability and power being white and not being human. Secures the position of power, whiteness, and colonizing is stereotypical activation of all sorts carried other than those are raised now in case debate though he is the only one, he's the one who cuts our cards out of conning our NIDT evidence for the how important it is, and the belief of press by nation is a model minority state that perpetuate anti-black by focusing on it, trying to stop it, ignore the structural lines that it's a rude, the broader realm of anti-black and Africans, where the original minority as ethnicity, although they the greater systems of black immigrants because African American culture is key, that the production of black white which part doesn't perceive, if you have to also deal with black people explain anti-black racial animosity, the United States or black immigrants are a mob minority thing and the role that or explicitly production mentions of black and equality making on black inequalities and inequality was different from the existing explanation because it is deeply informed by those who have worked to theorize the ways in which research organized try to say the black body is different and not considering the office and as body model, minority but as entirely though they are different, racial needs are assigned to black bodies as a result of perceived and safety and original origin and black bodies of this occurred in the racial beings that are considered the mob minority with the nation of American body politics and racial should be forced to be culture and anything but black and think equality black, immigrants because better than African Americans because they work harder and less, racial paranoid confirm remains the complete racial inequalities and making of the more general position of the more black is a lot of the US racial despite relatively small differentials in socio-economic stability between these black and things as well, minority sector and side Asian Americans and African immigrants are the modern example of African American immigrants are the modern example of model, minority and positive Koreans are the modern minorities anti-black as page, and said black immigrants are African and definitely bias, and 50 minority population will become to find the usual series of Asian minorities as the only modern minority black Americans remain invisible is no longer no matter how many of the college blacks are, and so they have families only that they're black, we need to revisiting of the person like a percentage system of feel, good of the gameplay needed folks with a deeper question of how the legislation can be improved and the opportunity to probe it up to those who are left behind between the civil rights revolution and the chin analogy flows negative chin 72 it is impossible to change person themselves as weak and helpless, minority blacks and people that don't see as a help and black and helpless, minority blacks are strong and helpful and black as tallest, also talk with non-white people in the United States.
I don't know how I feel about that, so you should probably not read that.
Okay.
I'm going to read it.
I was going to say, Julian. And violence is done to the Asian body because of their economic systems and ignores the gratuitous bonds that done the black by way into a post-Marxist affection to be for nothing against everything and system focus on capitalism downplays anything like the gratuitous bonds economic attributed so much economic was in favor generating the political without instruction on white assumption where the people study power and overrated by this investment by the favor society black Daniel white confrontation conviction of power groups internalization of the people call it institutional plus they was mistaken black social conference use race contribution or power managing forces for me to provide position for framing let them say custody and social life you work with the touch to let dive on, social relation find a social and this will calculate relation difference between this word capitalism and being marked to this rational bad, subjectivity and the racial growth and systematic of the then went to COVID possibly the generally subject of capitalism not if basic, and confidence of economic for dishonest lady, racial and cross racial and also capitalism fails to address anything like money, address it as a binary capital division.
So, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah.
It's the to me card. It says that black immigrants are the model minorities, right?
Are a, yeah.
Are a model minority. That's 6:30 left.
Take a second, bro.
Yeah. 6:27.
The only card I'm reading was in the 2AC.
Do you mind telling me which one?
Tank.
Tank? Oh, okay, cool.
This board's gonna be funky. Alright. How am I gonna do this? Okay. So, you know his overview, how it indicted conscientization? How that kind of corresponds with the conscientization case flow? You know what I'm talking about?
You mean the 2AC overview?
2NC overview.
She means the Tracy overview.
Oh, yeah, 2AC overview and 2NC overview were the same, or the same point of conscientization.
I have the 2AC overview on the conscientization flow,
Uh-huh.
and then I have the 2NC overview at the top of the critique.
Okay.
I'm down with flowing it on this thing.
I'm gonna start with the 2NC overview,
Okay.
Okay.
and then I'm gonna go to the 2NC proper.
Okay, good, because that's all straight down for me.
Sweet. Let me just make sure I know what I'm doing. And then the roll the ballot stuff for the one and on. And then the case analysis.
Okay. So I don't need my 2AC overview.
The 2AC overview will be embedded with the 2AC.
So I don't need this picture.
Just if I do follow along.
Are you ready? Okay. The 1AC is a stance that we refuse to model minorities to death. Conscientization is our methodology, something you still have not attacked. Coming out of coming out of life. Conscientization is a process of contemplation, knowing how we as Asians exist in the world, and how our methodology relates. With the way we do conscientization is by exposing the myth of the minority. The great difference between the affirmative and the negative performance is that the affirmative presented performance is one that actually does shit. Sit and Julie, yes, go to rich private schools. What does that mean? What do you do for black people? Absolutely freaking nothing. We are Asian Americans believe in the model minority, which is the reason why our denial of this model minority is solvency in and with itself, because we represent the Asian community denying this model minority, taking away our multiple ethnic blackness, going to the death and not becoming these model minorities that are junior partners of white people, instead of being like, we will take our position as the minorities in the first place, on the position of in the structure of anti-blackness. Yes, we're not we do yes, we are not black people, so we still take the way to anti-blackness because our object is one that holds up anti-blackness, which is the reason why I exposed the key. All the historical examples are the reason why the model minority is something he has talked about to myself after the Civil War. Plantation owners by schemes to ship millions of immigrants avoid hiring over class. Dealers claim that Chinese are better laborers and more obedient. The Chinese laborers also have been low, where they were used to replace the white strikers. People like Filipinos, Japanese, local nations were viewed as evil buyers, trying to infiltrate the 1960s when the civil rights movement started and black out started, white got scared. So they used these racial tensions just by letting in a lot of immigrants to use as a foot to the black culture problem. The myth also perpetuate anti-black in 1980 when people like Ronald Reagan were allowed to tout Asians being like they're doing so well in the country, and incarcerate blacks and use this as a reason to do this. All of these are historically examples why breaking down the myths of the minority gets rid of white supremacy's tool to do this. A reason why we're the one what's done. Conscientization solves this process. We begin with the anti-blackness test, which is why we do the model minority. But arguments about he says that the alternative solve because this is just theoretical shit. It doesn't do anything with the real world. Like we engage us engage arguments, we don't have affirmation. We are engaged too. Well, Patrick says since we advocate for a process of conscientization, we engage the model minority. Argument revolutionary suicide. You have to actually kill yourself to anti-blackness. Which is something that these are not things performing around. Don't let them get theoretical. Actually make them defense of it. The reason why we're the only ones that lead to real change as part of the ultimate he says that it's a selfless action. The selfless action doesn't do anything when it's not. The arguments later have nothing to do. He says that we are performing distraction. We are not performing distraction because the only reason why we present the model minority is to see how these intersections of oppression take place, how they relate to anti-blackness, how it causes the psychological violence against Asian Americans, how it perpetuates the Southeast Asian. We are very focused on this racism. Now, the root cause arguments and all the arguments about trigger warning are irrelevant. They will be extended on the case. The case robbery, extended permutation is well. This is different tracking, different people. Y'all can do your revolution side. We can break down this over binary. We unite coalition to solve. Let's take it to us and dismantle people. We have to help each other. People in power like to play solve. We like to model it. They need the point to dismantle fight because if we unite, we can make it difficult for that Asian this for the power it. That's what the different life. Also, this is that takes more than traditional values. It's also personal responsibility. Surrounding culture. The refugees are starting to that's moving forward. But your problem affects both me and my neighbor. Might be material, black, or Asian. This is not Asian are fundamental. When Asians are fundamental, then your partner's performance also playing. Or else it's based on methodology, and nothing like Asians already have methodology. It's about the level playing field arguments are false because we don't assume that Asians are in the same playing field back. We assume that Asians are higher up, which is why we use Asian right now. He said that they are my coalition. We're the only one who causes very coalition because coalitions need to invite all racial groups. Not just start with blacks, but the reason why their performance does not show. We're not starting because white team literally said to perpetuate these not to perpetuate anti-black to break down anti-black to the civil society. The argument out here dominating that. Conscientization is here with the argument lives. Conscientization is analysis of how our identity exists in the world. The reason why we do the break down the bottom the story he said that our stories cannot be good. Also, we are not political discourse. The Wilderson card, you're reading against the wrong side in front of us. The Wilderson card is the reason why blacks can go to conscientization because the first piece of content that blacks don't have an identity. This is about essentialized identity. We're saying individual black people have no identity. Reason why they can still go to conscientization, even if it doesn't. Permutation different types of different people. We don't have to affect the blacks go to conscientization. The one that rolled out is made no effing sense because the rolled out is the same for both teams. We just have that narrative of Asian oppression going on, which doesn't is not something that they come to greatness. Our performance measures. Other case terms. I'm going to extend the NIDP card right here. The NIDP card is a song report for Florida because it says that the only reason why Koreans are oppressed black Americans is because they fall like on this small iron man, which is the reason why we saw the blood. Not right on the card, something you just call out because they ignore Vincent Chan. Vincent, the knockout card facility says that there is never a good thing to be used no matter what the payoff is because of ignorance. The stereotypes that affect Asian Americans and black Americans are really flip sides of the same coin. The reason why the permutation is incredible. And that's what's playing against us. If we don't destroy these stereotypes, the modern minority, the future trade markets make the Asian, which is the reason why there will be gratuitous violence against Asian Americans if we don't get down with the minority. He says that blacks can be a minority. This is a contradiction with the negative origin. Blackness is really studying what identity. Why are they the minority? This interlocking contradiction is something that the negative origin is the reason you should follow that, which is the reason why they link to their own performance distracting arguments. Regardless, we still break down the myth of the minority. So we solve people back. The knocking out the evidence is the evidence definitely falls in front of it because this is the card is literally saying that we need to get rid of the myth of the minority. Conscientization is the only thing. We as Asians refuse this myth. So our performance actually solves something. They're just theorizing and not doing any type of shit.
Can I ask you a crossing style question?
Yes, sir.
Why does your performance do anything for other people that feel oppressed by the
Say what? I didn't hear that.
Why does your performance radically do something for other people that are oppressed by the minority?
For other people oppressed by the minority?
Yeah.
Your own NIDP card says that Asians use a minority myth.
Right, but that's also hypothetical. Just like all
this.
this evidence we're reading is hypothetical. Our app actually does something. What does your app actually
We
do?
go through a process of conscientization.
So it's just for you two.
Us two are breaking
That's not
down
method.
the volume. We are refusing to be.
Yeah, but how does that break down? That's fine. I guess I'm giving this speech 6 minutes earlier. All right. The half page that has all the stuff you flowed, and then the K straight down.
K in the case.
Oh, no, case and the K. Where did you make the argument that it's a formative contradiction for us to say that?
Case.
It's case. So that flow, and then the K flow straight down. All right.
View that into the simple statement, if there is no civil society, then there is no model minority. There's also no infighting, which is going to be their argument, because there is nothing that constitutes a minority, because everybody is socially dead, which is the reason why our alternative can access all their offense better. He says that Asian violence will become gratuitous, but that's the freaking difference. Black violence has always already been gratuitous, and the Asian violence has not been gratuitous in the past. The reason why you should prefer our starting point. I'll get to that a little bit more in the case power. He said formative contradiction because we said black is the model minority, but this is incoherent. It's not a formative contradiction. The purpose of this argument is to reveal that their paradigmatic analysis has categorically ignored the black body in terms of the way that it could be educationally profiled as well, which is the reason why it's takes out most of their arguments and proves one of our link arguments not a performance contradiction consistent with the rest of our performance. If you read these cards and determine that they are inconsistent, you can vote me down. Critique. Our methodology in this is better than this week. I have consistently telling you what Sid and I's interaction with the alternative is and what that resulted in that, why that is not only better for solving anti-blackness, but also the only thing that can solve anti-blackness. The only argument that they make that the only argument that they make that can disprove the alternative's ability to solve are in cross-section the 1AR, which should be a bright line for alternative solvency, because the 2AC was hella light on their methodology and dissents to our methodology, which is the reason why you should grant us some of their solvency. Michael keeps asserting that his app does shit outside of the debate room. I cannot tell you what it does and what is different from what Sid and I's performance does. There's some of the Qs are black, Sid and I are Korean, so that's equally not a reason to vote us down, because we can't engage in the process of their methodology. But we think that our methodology better reveals the refusal of the one and see to death, reveals the cruel optimism of whiteness, embracing the oppositional politics that utilizes ontology for a platform for oppression, strati for that's the Wilderson themselves, negationism, ethical action, a current colonial landscape, activity exposes the power of the colonial state to wage war against the slave. That's the price for a black life. That's the narrative himself to militant blackness is good, putting your life in the line in the face of anti-black racism. The only internal link to black agency, risking your life removes passivity, cleanses our black core of despair. Reasons why their coalition's argument are good are going to be a little bit more in the permutation, but these are all internal links to our argument, which is our below, which you keep evidence, and also Sid and I's story that we have thought about the best way that we can engage anti-blacknesses, and we have thought, hey, why not commit revolutionary suicide by advocating what the alternative does, because that alternative would inevitably result in Sid and I's death, because we are white, we attend a private school in South Florida, so we would be the first people that Wilderson would go shoot. That is the point. We are putting our lives on the line for a greater cause. We're doing this in the same way that they think that they can solve for Asian conscientization. There's a hypothetical aspect of this that cuts both ways. Double bind. Either when our performance also does something, or neither of our performances do anything. I've made that pretty clear above. The impact is gratuitous. Violence objects and subjects are defined by popular ontologies of blackness today. Ignorantly modality, hegemonic politics that is antithetical to movement against anti-black racism. That's through Rodriguez. That also this outweighs the anti-black body always already experiences the troubles of being a model minority, which means it's tried out from the negative. That's the section I would say drop the invisibility impact values argument that indicates that what is done to black bodies is not registered to David and Michael Q because it does not occur in the zone of their intelligibility, which is our impact framing argument, because the oppression that is done to the model minority is nothing and pales in comparison to the oppression that is felt by the black body. There's a difference between psychological violence and gratuitous violence of the police that happens every day. They've also directly controlled the root cause. Anti-black violence logically perceived any other form of violence would not be anti-black being black, because blackness is warned on one skin. It's part of the theological ethos where all their subjectivity is also permutation. Couple of drop arguments and they can't go over the permutation. There's no benefit. They mess up the because black body is associated, which means destroyed after the. We also cannot combine and refuse something that links to the unflinching paradigmatic analysis that view the 2EC right here as internal links to the section which was read in the 1 which indicates that their performance distracts from the antagonistic question, which has to be the starting point, because otherwise that becomes sidelined. The Asian violence is a conflict because they are perceived as white and can change their social location. And that would be true of the black body because the black body actions are alternative. They've dropped a solvency take by the permutation, not achieve synthesis in the 1AC, because the demands of Asians and slaves are fundamentally irreconcilable. Expansion cannot be matched with flesh reparation. The antagonism of anti-black violence that dispute the 1AC is an unsolvable conflict. That's the Wilderson. It's also that brings me back to the section which indicates that incorporating obscures the structural position of blackness within society decimates coalition, but the only unflinching nature of the alternative can resolve the question of authentic revolution. I know that's your favorite card because you picked us up on it at the level. It's also the master dish that's not answered properly. Civil society must be approached with a singular understanding of anti-blackness. Identifying with the politics of Asian identity can co-opt leads to ontological suffering. The slave and the Asian experience a different relationship to violence, while the settler can experience violence. Only the slave bears the burden of its brute force and its experiential question. Also, the invisibility that isn't answered. I'm gonna end on the argument that their performance does not do anything fundamentally different from what our performance does. I'm asking you to engage this debate as a question of who has the best methodology for challenging anti-blackness. I think the negative has performed that methodology.
What's that on 6.7?
Yeah.
Case critique.
You will sign your ballot after this debate because the tutor and I neglected to extend a link in the case flow. Are you serious? You have to again to see the impacts of the 1AC. One is psychological violence, conscientization. That links all of this, but you don't have any reason how suicide changes the way agents think. Their turn case argument predicated on getting rid of anaphylaxis, but they have to win solvency first. Anaphylaxis cannot resolve my internal psychological violence. Only the ask conscientization and a constant clarification of who I am in relation to able to solve. Now, the link argument that they should have extended is the NIDT card. It's an ask card. The way we agent perpetuate anaphylaxis by using it as a tool. Conscientization is able to solve because it means that we refuse to be used that tool in white supremacy and stop using that tool white supremacy and game for call the card that I have read in the 2AC, which is the rehighlight card of their card. If the only reason agents perpetuate anaphylaxis is through the myth of the minority. The second link card is an Iowa card, it's a permutation solvent card, and a dissent to all. If they're paradigmatic analysis does not involve the myth of the minority, then it will just create more distinctions of the future. Anti-immigrant sentiments will go out because we are not interrogating the stereotypical differences of Asian Americans and African Americans. That one says that Black and Asians need to work together to be able to stop the same card, or else future trade markets may indeed be Asian, not ultimately blind. Even if everyone is socially dead, and these Asians are socially dead, and Asians should be a part of that black market. Does not mean that the myth of the Malmai does not exist. It does not mean that Asians do not feel gratuitous violence. Yes, they continue all the historical analysis, gratuitous except that Vincent Chin, the Dot the kids that got shot by Patrick Purdy. All this is gratuitous violence that is hidden by the myth of the Malmai, not seen in a current civil society because of the myth of the Malmai portraits of as students and our work. He says that the argument about black model minorities was incoherent. No, the black model minorities does not disprove that Asians are seen as a model minority. If you vote on this argument, it means that the model minority should be breaking down. It's just another reason why the vote over it goes to proceed now on the overall overview. What is their methodology? Julia keeps on saying it's a debate about competing methodology. However, all you know about their methodology is suicide. They don't actually commit suicide. They just say, oh, we're gonna just have doing selfless act and pretend we suicide. That is a theoretical bullshit. Their Wilderson concept that we must have a very active analysis challenge the structures of anti-blackness. How does suicide challenge the structures of anti-blackness? We are actually going for a process of conscientization because we are going epistemologically in this debate. The reason the model minority exists is because the Asians believe it, and that's why they use it as a tool to perpetuate anti-blackness. Me and Michael growing epistemology means that we refuse to use that tool and refuse to perpetuate anti-blackness right now. Now, they didn't say that their alternatives are refuse of degradation military. There's no reason why this is not conscientization, which are epistemological constant clarification and taking active steps to change the world. Just suicide doesn't challenge the destruction that Wilderson said. Conscientization is able to see why anti-blackness is in civil society right now and challenge those structures. So Wilderson was saying conscientization in TBS argument that gets me into the impact debate, which is this root cause debate. Even if we have to concede that civil society shouldn't be discarded, anti-blackness shouldn't be discarded. But however, why does anti-blackness exist? In the standpoint, the crossing of the truancy, Julian said the middle passage. However, notice how the middle passage would not say one in the two in order. The reason anti-blackness exists in civil society because of the minority. Yes, the middle passage might explain it up to the civil rights movement, but when black uprising took part, when they started fighting for the rights, the white supremacists had to get stricken. They had to justify the bigotry, not just be outright racist. So what did they do? They took the Asians and these as a justification, be like, look at these Asians. It is your fault that you are not doing well, that you are being put in the Philippines. the rationality of anti-violence, a reason why civil society exists today, the gratuitous violence will take place, is that for psychological violence and that permutation debate. Last time I only waited for this for testing, I'll explain to you very clearly here. Permutation different strategy for different people. This means that I can go through a bunch of conscientization. Julian said can go commit suicide now. This means that we are not a co-option, not a taking of your methodology. However, we are coexisting and saying that we can go through a breakdown in the midst of the model argument because coming out the tour, they have no reason why Asian becoming critical conscious is a bad thing or perpetuates and like Laila, I get why you're socially dead. Why does that mean Asians cannot go epistemology? Your suicide is able to resolve that with a permutation result. He says we cannot combine. This is not combined. This is not drafting your alternate onto our advocacy yet. It's a bridge that allows these two methodologies to coexist. He says that anyone isn't dark, that must be dark in the one scene. He said Asians are white. The reason people view Asians are white is the resentment that Chain Car talks about and how Asians are portrayed as model minorities. That's exactly what we make critique. It's ironic. Also, conscientization is able to solve that. He said the permutation is sensitive. Again, it's not sensitive because we are not drafting your advocacy on to ourselves. We just say that we can coexist. You can commit suicide and we can go epistemology. Now, he has dropped a postcard that he talked about. It can also develop a critical conscience because it's a community activity where they can grow critically conscious to the structure that allows civil society to exist.
The coalition.
Extended takeover says coalitions that the mechanism of model is what breaks down these coalitions, which turns their coalitions.
That's not bad.